The dawn along the eastern walls of the Red Keep came thin and glass-pale, a filament of light teasing the crenels and the sword shadows the night left behind. Jaime's white cloak, folded over the chair near his bed, caught a whisper of it and seemed to glow with its own austere fire. He lay awake before the bell in the September-told prime, reading the faint fissures of plaster in the ceiling and listening to the old keep wake, the far, iron creak of a portcullis chain taking a test pull, the grumble of a baker's cart on paving stones, gulls arguing on the wind beyond the gate of the gods. The city stirred like a great creature rolling in sleep, its breath salt and ashen bread still hot enough to make a man's empty stomach take notice. He rose when the bell pealed. The air in the White Sword Tower was cool even in summer, stone that remembered winter better than men did. He washed in water that tasted faintly of copper from the ewer, combed gold through gold with a lazy hand, and bound his hair back with ribbon. He waited before he touched the cloak. He always did. It was a small superstition he would not confess, not even to the man he had been at 17, standing straight as a spear beside Sir Arthur Dane under a maddened king. Then he took up the white and swung it over his shoulders, the fabric settling with the mild, implacable weight of a vow. He buckled on sword belt and dagger, his hands moved by memory, the leather soft and well-shaped by years of habit. He had not been sober yet the morning he took his white cloak. He had not expected to be. Ares had a taste for theater. Vows performed like mummers' plays, all of them taking their places on the stage and speaking the words they were told to speak. Jaime remembered the throne room as an echoing cold, the iron above like a cliff, the torch smoke biting. He had spoken his oaths anyway, and for a long season afterward he had treated them as a sort of jest played on him by fate and by a father who saw in every piece its place on his board. Men said vows were words, and words were wind, but the wind could cut if you ran against it. The stair down to the common chamber of the tower smelled of oak wax and old vellum. The white book waited there on its lectern, its vellum pages the slow parade of men better or worse than the rest. Jaime touched the edge of a page with 2 fingers as he passed, not out of piety, exactly, but out of a feeling that might have been respect or rivalry with the dead. His own page was too short. It sat stunted in the middle of that heavy tome, a life only half told, a story of a boy who had killed a king and was mocked for it. Someone had written his hand neat as law. Sir Jaime of House Lannister, the youngest knight of the Kingsguard in living memory. Red Keep, King's Landing. By his action in the throne room. And then the words, dry as flour. The ink did not know the smell of burnt hair or the hiss of fat from a man's scalp. It did not know that fear was louder than bells. Early for you, came a mild voice, and Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard turned from the open doorway that looked down the hill toward the city. The morning made his hair a web of silver. He wore his cloak like a standard set in calm air. Jaime offered him half a smile. The day does not belong entirely to the pious. No, Barristan said, but it is improved by their example. You'd have me kneel, sir? I'd have us all remember what we are. Selmy did not lecture. He stated, as a mason might name a stone by its color and grain. But even a statement could irritate at an hour when the belly was empty and the tongue dry. Jaime let the chiding pass. The kitchens were awake before the bells, he said. I can smell the bread from here. The king hunts today, Barristan said. The cooks labor to prepare him for it. Wine, you mean? Jaime loosened his jaw. He needs less of that to ride straight, not more. Barristan's mouth made a shape that was not quite a smile. I am not his nurse, nor am I. Jaime moved to the window. Below them, the roofs of King's Landing slept on their bellies, as if only the chimneys were watchful. The river's bend caught the sun in a glance. We are sworn to his protection, even from wine. We are sworn to him, Barristan answered. From arrow, blade, poison, or trick, and we do so with only what the gods give us, sword, eye, and patience. There are limits to the arm of a man. A king who will not be guided cannot be dragged. And yet, Jaime said, but he let it lie. It was an old road between them, worn smooth by passing. Barristan had served 3 kings before Robert. and his faith in the shape of duty had become a kind of prayer he could say without thinking. Jaime envied it sometimes, and at others despised it. He did not know, even now, which feeling was truer. At the great table in the White Sword Tower's hall, a servant had left a trencher with a heel of bread, olives, a wedge of hard, pale cheese, and a dish of honey so clear you could see the coarse wood of the dish through it. There was a covered flagon of small beer. Jaime sat, broke the bread, and let the crust cut at the roof of his mouth. He ate slowly. There was a letter lying by his trencher, folded and sealed in a red wax too deep a shade to be any hand but the one he knew from childhood. His fingers turned the seal so the lion looked up at him from the wax. Barristan's glance flicked. It was hard to hide anything from a man who knew the tilt of your shoulders and the angle of your breath. Jaime did not break the seal at once. He wiped his fingers on a cloth. He drank a little beer, it soured deep enough to wake his tongue. Then he cracked the lion in two with his thumb. The parchment had the faint spice smell that came from the wax they used at Casterly Rock. The bees there fed with thyme and some plant that had no name in the East. His father's hand was precise. Upright letters carved as if with a knife, spaces X. Act no flourish, no sentiment. He read until the words became his father's voice under his skull. The sentences laid out like an army on parade. The Riverlands had taken offense, and the Riverlands would learn humility. The girl from Winterfell had seized Tyrion like a common thief upon the King's Road, and the Starks would be reminded why a lion need not roar twice. Tywin was mustering at the Golden Tooth, and he required his heir to bring lances and banners, to take command of the van, to teach a boy in the north where power flows. The ink said it as if it were already done. There was no room for another shape of the day. Jaime folded the letter along the crease his father's secretary had pressed for him. He set it beside the honey dish, and for a long moment his gaze fixed on the clear gold there, the slow grip of it against the rim of the wood. He could not say afterward if time passed or if it stood with him and watched itself breathe. The smell of bread, the sound of Barristan's careful steps as he moved to the lectern and turned a page with 2 fingers and too much reverence, the thin desert whine of a summer fly tracing the casement. The Lord of Casterly Rock speaks with an expectation few would gainsay, Barristan said at length. He had not come near the table. He had not read the letter. He could not have, unless he had leapt a dozen paces and reached it in some miracle of old age he had not yet shown. But men were animals too, and they scented storms in each other. He requires me to assemble the van and ride, Jaime said, as if he were stating the weather. He is mustering at the Golden Tooth. He expects my obedience, as always. We are sworn, Barristan said gently, and Jaime wondered if the old knight knew the fall of every stone in this wall before he had seen it. You are of the Kingsguard. The words were ordinary. They fell soft as wool. Inside him, they dropped as though he had opened his chest and let a lead weight go. The chain that linked him to his father ran up through years. He could not remember a day it had not been there. It had chafed. It had held. He had cut it once, in a throne room under the madman, and they had called him Oathbreaker for it. Still the chain lay, bright and smooth and strong. He closed his eyes just enough to make the room blur. He looked like himself to others, this he knew, for they told him it often, the good and the ill of it, and he had learned to keep that face calmly above the water even when he felt the sea filling his mouth. Will you send him an answer? Barristan asked. Jaime laughed with no humor, a single breath. I have sent him nothing in 20 years. He did not write for me first. Send him this, then, Barristan said, and write it yourself, that you have sworn, and you will not abandon the king. Let him be master of his banners. You be master of your word. Jaime looked up at him. Do you think your righteousness so contagious? Have a care, sir. It is not the only pox that passed in this city between men without their consent. Barristan inclined his head, accepting the barb as if it were a harmless fly to be brushed aside with the back of a gloved hand. You will do as you must, he said simply. What he must. The words were a prayer and a curse both. He broke off another corner of bread and did not eat it. He laced his fingers and looked down at the parchment as if the ink could confess its maker's thoughts if held long enough under a gaze. The city beyond the window had grown more insistent with the day. Cries from the fish market riding the wind like birds, and the thud of wheels in the lanes punctuating the hum. Somewhere in the palace, a trumpet announced a minor lord who wanted his name carried before him into rooms where names mattered. The morning had begun moving and would not be commanded to stop. He rose. "My lord father will have his answer." He folded the letter again. It would not fit his pocket without a crease crossing the lion's face. He did it anyway. "I should see the king." "The king is with the queen," Barristan said. "He breaks his fast in her rooms." "Then I will see the queen first," Jaime said, and left Barristan with the Book of Brothers and the lacework of light on vellum. The walk from the White Sword Tower to Maegor's Holdfast climbed and twisted. Jaime took it at a measured stride, cloak trailing the steps like foam. Servants passed him with lowered eyes, thin men carrying baskets of figs, women with their hair covered, boys with wrestlers' bare feet. A cat watched him from beneath a table where someone had left a helmet to dry. The cat's green eyes judged him and found him wanting. He winked and kept on. Cersei's room smelled of pomegranate and powder. A sweetness lacquered over a bitter pith. A page in Lannister read opened for him, and he found her by the window with her hands around a cup of wine and a face trained to look as if the hour agreed with her. She had always hated mornings. He knew the movements of her moods as he once knew the lay of the hills behind Casterly Rock, the dips where shadow lingered, the ridges where you could see the sea. Joffrey sat apart, cutting at a pear with a knife broader than such work warranted, watching as juice glazed the blade. Sandor Clegane stood in shadow behind the boy, a ruin with a dog's patience in his stance. Lancel flitted in and out and spilled, as ever very nearly. He poured with both hands and yet found a way to slop wine on the tablecloth. He stammered an apology and fled and returned with a cloth and, trembling, made it worse. "Ser Jaime," Cersei said, and the cool front of her mask warmed. It always did, for him. She could not help it, neither could he. "You are up with the sun. I am proud of you." "This city's bells never learned the habit of whispering," he answered. He gave Joffrey a nod that held as much respect as he could find. The boy frowned, irritated at not being the first addressed. He lost interest in the moment and went back to maiming the pear. Cersei watched Jaime's hand go into his cloak and watched more closely when he drew out the folded parchment. He laid it on the table before her, and the wax, cracked across the lion's face, glared up. She read his father's words faster than he had. Her mouth made its tiny, necessary adjustments as she calculated. "He means you to go west," she said. "Or north," Jaime said. "There are rivers between us and Winterfell, and they do not all run the same direction. But the general drift of the thing is clear enough." "He means you to lead father's van," Joffrey said, without looking up. He said father the way a boy says a word he knows has weight even if he has not yet learned its lift. The pear's white meat was ragged under the knife. He stuck the tip into the table and watched the juice pool around it, awe in the simple mechanics of it. "You should go." "I am of the Kingsguard," Jaime said. Joffrey turned on the bench. "And yet Tywin Lannister is Lord of Casterly Rock. His command does not unmake my oath," Jaime said. He kept his tone light, as if they were discussing the cut of a sleeve. "I swore before gods and men to keep a king from harm. It is a grave matter, your grace, to abandon such a vow." Joffrey's mouth found the posture that pleased him in the mirror, an expression like a blade, thin-lipped, a boy's idea of a man's scorn. "A Kingsguard serves the king according to the king's will. And the king's will is that the realm be protected. My grandfather protects the realm. Therefore the will of the king redeems the will of the hand. Which, the king's will," Cersei said, and put a hand on his wrist. She did not squeeze. She did not need to. "Will be informed by counsel that loves him. Your grandfather's letter is to Jaime, not to you. We are fortunate that he considers the needs of this city with such care." Joffrey's gaze flicked between them, suspicion a habit with him now, or perhaps a pleasure. "You mean to keep him here?" "He is sworn," Cersei said smoothly. "To you, As are we all. Sandor's scar twisted. Jaime did not know if that was humor or a pain as old as the man. Lancel poured again and managed not to spill. Progress. You do not need me in the west, Jaime said quietly. He did not sit. He stood at the end of the table and let the words go, one after another, stones placed precisely. You need me at your back, and at your right hand, and in the door before trouble walks through it. Father's letters have never contained room enough for me and my vows both. So today I choose the vows. Cersei's eyes widened very slightly. He could not read it fully. Surprise, yes, and a fast recalculation. But there was, for an instant, a relief that slipped through the cracks in her mask like lamplight through shutters. She touched the parchment with one fingertip. He will not be pleased. He is never pleased, Jaime said. Pleasure is not in his nature. Joffrey's brow had drawn down. I command, he began. And I obey, Jaime said, bowing so the boy could bask in it. I obey in the thing I am sworn to do. Afterward, he left them to their mourning. He took the stairs down to the yard slowly, feeling the edges of his vow as a man might feel the edges of a new blade. Testing for burrs. In the yard, a handful of men-at-arms were at practice. The clack of blunted swords on shields a metronome. The smell of sweat and dust and oiled leather reclaimed all the airs of Cersei's chamber and made them ridiculous. He walked the perimeter, hands behind him, the white cloak trailing through chalk and shadow. Men looked up as he passed. He gave them his indifferent, slight nod in return. He did not practice that morning. Instead, he found a bench beneath an arch and sat and let his body be quiet. He wrote in his head. He composed a letter he would not have written once. A letter that not only refused but explained why it refused, as if his father could be convinced. As if his father had ever needed convincing beyond the cold calculus of advantage. He began it, stopped, began again. He weighed words like coins. For a long while the balance came up empty, no phrase heavy enough to tilt it. You have the look of a man who swallowed a stone, said a voice from the archway's shade. Varys came with the odd delicacy of a man who wore soft shoes to hide the fact he floated. He made a shape of concern that did not disturb the perfect line of his powder on his cheeks. I do hope it sits light, Sir Jaime. It is a small stone, Jaime said, but sharp. Ah! Varys folded his hands, each finger finding its mate with the precision of a banker counting. How fortunate we are that mouths are not the only way out of a man. Else we should both be there all day with a pry bar and a prayer. You spend too much time imagining other men's bowels, Jaime said. It will sour your dreams. I try to keep my dreams for myself, Varys murmured. He tilted his head. May I sit? Jaime gestured to the bench. Varys's silk made a sigh against the wood. His perfume was wax and flowers, and the faintest memory of something like myrrh or char. Jaime wondered if the smell was meant to seduce, to lull, to distract, or simply to cover a man's honest sweat. With Varys, it could be all of these at once. I understand, Varys said, that a raven flew very fast from the west. Ravens do not grow slow with wealth, Jaime said. They have the same wings no matter whose grain line their nests. Some nests are more comfortable than others, Varys said, looking out at the yard. 2 pages were struggling with the straps on a dummy. Between them, they could not tighten a buckle designed for one man with sense. But I am not here to discuss ornithology, however dear the subject is to maesters. I am here to commend you. Commend me? Jaime snorted. For what offense? For remembering your vows, Varys said. It is such an old-fashioned virtue. It shines in this city like the moon, rarely seen in full and often occluded by clouds. Spare me your poetry, Spider, Jaime said. If you are so fond of vows, why do you spend your life cutting them out of men and collecting the sticky parts in jars? Varys's face became a theater mask of sorrow, and then it passed, a ripple on a pond. Because men bind themselves to the wrong things so often, he said, and because I have a poor sense of smell. It is easier for me than for others to live amid rot. But I am sincere. The realm will be safer with you inside these walls, Sir Jaime. We are all safer when men do what they have said they will do. You should hang that upon the gate, Jaime said. Write it in gold. Gold fades faster than ink in sunlight, Varys said. Trust me, I know my materials. He stood then, with no more sound than he had sat, and spread his hands. I shall tell no one, of course, that the Lord Commander of the West thinks of nothing but his oath. Tell everyone, Jaime said. Let my father hear before the raven lands. Varys' smile flicked its eyes at him and then away. I do not have that long an arm, he said softly. Not yet, but I am trying. The day wore forward. Jaime drafted his letter in the solar where the Kingsguard kept their records. The quill squeaked faintly when it entered a stroke with more ambition than breadth. Ink dried black as night in the small pot and on his knuckles. He did not waste words. I am sworn to remain with the king, he wrote, and underlined sworn once, lightly, as if to make a sound you could hear only if you leaned close. He wrote with that courtesy which is sharper than contempt. He sealed it with a cheap wax. They did not keep expensive wax in the tower. That had always been a message to him, too, and pressed an anonymous ring into it, because it would not do to make the lion kneel to itself. He sent it with a boy he had used before for small messages between towers. The boy's hair stood up in stubborn, fair spikes, and he had a scar along one knuckle a cat had given him. Fly, Jaime said, and the boy nodded and vanished as if the walls had swallowed him. Some people belonged to castles the way Ivy did. Near midday, he was summoned to the king. Robert sprawled on a couch in the larger solar that overlooked the river. The place was strewn with the wreckage of a feast for one man. Bones and the last pathetic peasants of grapes fallen from their cluster and rolled into corners. Wine like blood on a cloth. A ham hock with its fat cut in crude scallops where a knife had hacked. The king had never learned delicacy. He swam through pleasures as a boar swam through mud. Glad noise and splatter. You look solemn, Kingslayer, he said without malice. The name fell out of his mouth the way names fell out of drunkards, indifferent to who might pick them up and use them. What are you doing in that ridiculous tower when all the fun's to be had out there? He waved his hand in a way that could mean the yard, the city, the world. I am sworn, your grace, Jaime said, which answered nothing but could offend no one. To what? Robert chortled. Ah yes, to me. Do you know, there are mornings when I remember that and am surprised I can still get a piss out. I shall have a maester examine your humors, then, Jaime said. Examine my humors? They're all excellent. Ale, wine, and the occasional good laugh. I have more humors than all the maesters in the city combined. Robert's mood was good today. He had not yet begun to drink in earnest. He would, of course, but a high tide that comes in slowly is gentler on a shore than a storm surge. You will ride with me. To the hunt, Jaime said. To the God's damned hunt, Robert said. A man needs to feel free now and again. A stag that runs is better than 1,000 lords that kneel. Have you noticed how quiet they all have become, of late? As if someone has set a fox among the hens, and they hope to be mistaken for the wall. I have noticed men, Jaime said, which was true and called for no more. Robert grunted. His eyes, when they were clear, had a kind of honest brutality to them that Jaime did not hate. There were worse things than a man who meant what he said even when what he said was foolish. And you have received a letter, Robert said, slicing to the meat as he often did when politics skirted the edges of his patience. From the West. My father summons me to his banners, Jaime said. He is of a mind to teach Lord Stark a lesson. Robert's mouth went crooked. Stark needs no more lessons than he already took at my side on the Trident. It is his children, and God's help us, ours, that need the schooling. He sat forward, the couch complaining. I need you here. I had thought so, Jaime said. Then you will not mind if I refuse him. Refuse Tywin? Robert barked a laugh that was 2 parts pleasure to 1 part disbelief. Gods, I hope he chokes on it. No, I didn't say that. No one heard me say that. I have the finest relations a man can buy at sword point, do you know that? Everywhere I turn, I find a Lannister smiling and measuring me for a suit of my own guts to fit his table. Your prick is the least offense any of you have given me, and I count it as the one I'm most grateful for." He reached for the wine and decided, with visible effort, to pour only a single cup. "If I tell you to stay, will you?" "You are the king," Jaime said. He listened to his own voice as if it were someone else's. Did he sound relieved? Did he sound like a man who had found someone else to put in the road between himself and his father? He did not know. He did not care. He was content to take the shelter if offered. "I will stay." "Good." Robert drank and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Tywin will rage. That will be fine sport for someone. I confess I wish it could be me. But I will have to content myself with the boar. They say there's a great tusker in the Kingswood. I intend to show him what a king is go. OD for when he's not between two thighs." Jaime bowed his head. The image that moved behind his eyes then was small and quick. So quick he might have missed it if he had not learned to watch his own mind as a hawk watches a hare. It was Lancel's face, young and eager and too thin, leaning too close to a cup. It was Cersei's hand on a flagon, tips of her fingers white where she gripped and steadied, and the weight of something that was not just wine in her quietness. He remembered a spill of words from a night like any other when the shadows made secrets and the sheets made a world. Remembered her saying she would rather be a widow than a wife to a man who laughed to hide from his fear. He had laughed then too. Now he did not. "Your Grace," he said carefully, as if stepping over loose stones. "There are hunts and there are hunts. The king's safety depends upon brave men and good luck," Robert said, finishing for him. "Have you never ridden behind me before?" Jaime smiled because that was the mask he had. Too often to count. Robert clapped him on the shoulder with a weight that made the bones there aware of their purpose. "Then do it again, Sir Jaime. Keep me alive today," he said lightly, the way men pick flowers along the road. "I would see another evening's meet." When Jaime left the king, he found a place along the gallery where sun made the floor warm as bread. He leaned his shoulder to the pillar and looked across at the inner ward. Men came and went like thoughts. He looked for Lancel. When he found him, the boy was speaking with a cellarer, both men nodding repeatedly as if nods were currency. Lancel held a list. He looked important. Jaime knew that feeling, the one that comes when you are trusted to fetch a thing that matters. He waited until Lancel was alone again, then stepped down. "Cousin," Jaime said. The boy startled poorly and nearly dropped his list. "Sir, I, my lord." "Your hands are steadier with a sword than a pitcher," Jaime observed. "But I imagine they will learn." Lancel stammered something that might have been thanks. His eyes darted, looking for the thing he did not want to see. "The king rides," Jaime said. "Seal the small casks yourself, then have the cellarer put his hand to them. Then bring them to me." "To you." "I will smell them," Jaime said. "I will tip them and watch how the wine runs. I will taste if I must. Then I will carry them to the king myself." Lancel had the decency to blush, that at least the boy had not run out of the city of his blood. He nodded and nodded again and fled. In the afternoon, the king hunted. The court became a procession of men who wanted to be seen with a bow on their shoulder and boots muddy enough to suggest courage, but not so muddy as to stain their reputation. Cersei watched from the steps with the air of a priestess dispatching sacrifices. Barristan took his place with the calm of a bell hung in a tower, solid, ready to be struck. Sandor mounted with bored efficiency. Joffrey came as well, bristling with more accoutrements than his body knew how to use. Jaime rode at Robert's right hand. The horse was Lannister, a courser finer than the king's mule-faced charger, and Robert did not fail to see it. He made a coarse joke about golden saddles that made the men behind them laugh a little too loudly, and they were off. The Kingswood had a smell all its own, green and depthless, beech and birch and the iron smell of soil. Sun fell through leaves in coins. The day's heat had not yet gathered, and the horse's breath plumed white when they first exerted themselves. Robert rode as he did all things, full bore, careless of posture, as if the speed could outrun the shape his life had taken. Jaime watched the king between glances at the trail. When they drew rein at a meadow where a small stream had forced a clearing, Lancel arrived with a small cask in his arms. He had that look again, as if doing a thing quickly enough made it better. Jaime took the cask from him and set it on the grass. He pulled the stopper and let the wine run in a thin red rope. It clung to the wood at the lip, reluctant to fall. He tapped the cask, and the rope grew bolder. He smelled. It was sweet, as wine is, but there was a note under it like the rinds of apples left in the sun too long. He rubbed a drop between thumb and forefinger and waited for the skin to feel numb. Nothing. He wetted a finger and touched it to his tongue. The taste was wine's, a little rough in the mouth with a bite that belonged. He poured the trickle into a cup and turned to Robert. "Wine, your grace," Jaime said. "Not too cold, not warmed through. It should please." "You sound like a wife," Robert said, taking the cup and drinking gladly. "You should find yourself one. Sleep well, make a lot of bastards. The world cannot have enough dishonor to go around as it is." "That is the first advice you have ever given me I mean to take," Jaime said. He watched Robert tip the cup and watched the man's throat as he swallowed. It moved with the honest work of life. His mind had two rooms in it then, one that watched, counting swallows, and one that wandered through memory and found itself unexpectedly at the door of a small room with shutters and a bed he had lain in with his sister and a future they had made between them, monstrous and beloved. He closed the door and turned the key and went on breathing. The hunt found a stag's track, old but not useless, and they followed it to where the path broke into wet ground and broke again into thorn. Robert cursed his boots and laughed and cursed again. Joffrey tried to hold his horse as if he had ridden his whole life, and the horse told a different story beneath him. Sandor managed both without seeming to try at all. Barristan looked as if he had become horse and man together. Jaime rode and was what he had always been, a man who knew the worth of a point held at the right angle. At the end of the day, the kill they made W. As not the boars but a fat red deer, smaller than most of the king's boasts, but large enough to serve as consolation. Robert was in good humor and did not push his luck deeper into the trees. On the ride back he sang a song from long ago, its words half faded from his memory, mumbling the parts he had eaten with time and loud in the parts he liked. And if the song made some men uncomfortable, because it spoke of girls and victory both, and those two tastes together made some feel ill, they hit it well. Jaime listened, and if he felt something like a wooden bar pushed gently across his chest, holding him back from a place he could not name, he said nothing of it. 2 days later, a raven came from the west with his father's reply. It was short. Tywin did not write letters that wasted ink. He did not write letters to vent. That was a privilege of lesser men. He wrote for effect. He wrote to be understood, and so the sentence was a blade honed by years and strapped leather. You are a Lannister and my heir. A king is a moment. Blood is the mountain. There was more in it, naturally. His father did not omit to mention the insult to House Lannister worked by the seizure of Tyrion by the Stark woman, nor the foolishness of letting one's enemies choose the ground of their quarrel. But all of that was embroidery around the hem of the garment, a matter meant to draw the eye and not the body. Jaime's refusal had struck him as untenable because it had suggested the possibility of any other arrangement in which Tywin's will was not the final proposition of reality. The letter was a wall. He was expected to break himself on it and feel grateful to be rebuilt. He read it twice. The second time he heard a faint undertone in the words, something like the hum stone makes when struck. It was disappointment, but not the disappointment of a father in a son. That word had too human a shape. It was the disappointment of a craftsman in a tool that had developed an unexpected curve. Jaime felt the old anger rise through him like water through sand. It filled him more slowly now than it had when he was a boy, but it could drown just the same. He did not write back. He wrote instead in the white book because words there had at least the smell of permanence, if not the taste. He wrote nothing about Tywin. He wrote only the date, and that on this day Ser Jaime of House Lannister stood his watch while the king hunted the Kingswood and returned with laughter and blood on his hands. And the city's bells rang in the evening, and no one died. The entry was small. It looked like one of those thin years where drought shrinks everything to sharp edges. Comforted him a little. In the days that followed, nothing changed and everything changed. The city kept to its patterns. Ships came. Men lied. The September drew the pious and those who hoped to be mistaken for them. Cersei moved through the palace with lethal grace. Joffrey learned new ways to make those around him flinch. Robert drank. Robert sobered. Robert swore to hunt again. The letters came from the west and lay cold as stones on Jaime's table. He had grown used to the feel of them near him, to the way they pressed weight against the wood. He did not open all of them. Some stayed sealed, lions glaring up. He would break them when his anger cooled, and it never did. Barristan watched him with eyes that had seen so many seasons of men he had lost count. Varys passed like a rumor with feet. Littlefinger smiled and taught Silver to walk out of a man's purse. Janos Slint fattened on favors and made the gold cloaks a thing you could hire like a ship if only you knew the right harbor. Eddard Stark walked the Red Keep with a man's grief hidden in plain sight. Jaime saw it under the frost on his face. The grief for an old friend made into a canker by politics. They did not converse. They did not need to. Each knew the other too well and not at all. Only once did they speak, in a passage where the window looked out on the dry moat and the sun fell in a slope of late afternoon light. Stark stood a moment to watch the dust drift in that light. Jaime paused without meaning to, as if something in the way the man stood had caught him by the wrist. Then he shrugged inwardly and began to move on. "You did not ride out," Stark said, without turning. "No," Jaime said. "I remained where I was told." Stark turned. The lines beside his eyes were deep as knife cuts. "You choose a good day to remember your oaths." "The best day," Jaime said, and smiled. Stark's mood tightened. "When you are watching, I sleep better," he said. It was not a compliment, not really. It was a statement of the kind Barristan liked. "When you are not, I worry whose orders you are following." "Mine," Jaime said, and that was almost true. Stark inclined his head. He had in him a dignity that made men glad they did not have to carry it. It was so heavy. Then follow them and let them be lawful. There is less room in this city than we think for men to move. One day, Lord Stark, Jaime said, taking a step, you will discover that the space between your feet and the ground is enough room for a man to lose his soul. When I have to choose, Stark said, and the words were flat as winter, I will not be surprised to find I have no soul to spare. They passed each other and did not look back. The king's second hunt went more ragged. The boar's sign was fresh along a stream where the sedge bent and recovered, and Robert would not be swayed. He rode with ferocity. Men who had been comfortable earlier now looked at the trees as if they were waiting to be told whether they would be loved or killed. Jaime watched Lancel again. The boy was careful with the casks. He was careful with the stoppers. He was careful with the king's cup. Jaime took the cup anyway. He did not drink from it. He held it for Robert until the man tore it from his hand like a dog that thinks you withhold because you mean to tease. When they found the boar, it was large enough to quiet even Robert. The creature's shoulder was a slab, its hide a page of scars written by other fools. The dogs gave it distance when it turned. It made a noise that was not a squeal, not entirely. It was a roar stolen from some other animal and stuffed into a pig's mouth. Robert spurred and charged, and for a moment Jaime thought the day was about to become a story some future clerk would tell wrong in a book. But the spear found the shoulder, and the boar did not turn cleanly. It ran, and the ground ran with it, and the men stumbled after. The air filled with breadcrumbs of torn leaves. They lost the boar. This was no child's tale where the beast obligingly waited in a clearing for the hero to return. The woods closed like a hand. Robert swore and nearly threw his spear, then remembered it was his and held on. His breath was harder when they stopped, his face flushed. He drank. Jaime watched. He felt like a man trying to balance on a narrow wall over a deep drop. One foot flat, the other testing for a stone that would hold. Nothing happened. Nothing is deceptive. It looks like the world. It looks like how things will always be. It is a seduction. They rode back to camp tired and wet. Joffrey sulked magnificently. Clegane said nothing. Barristan's face wore composure like a visor. Jaime took off his gloves, flexed his fingers, and listened to his body inventory its bruises. Back in the Red Keep, the evening was a different drum. Torches threw hair upon the walls. Musicians practiced in a room they thought no one listened to, in that earnest way men have when they think their work is private. A woman in a green gown wept, and no one asked her why. Ravens stood black against the sky and made the kind of sound a hinge makes when it has not been oiled. Cersei came to Jaime's door without knocking and stood in it, hands clasped, head tipped. "You stayed," she said. She had wanted to say more. She had meant to say less. This was what came out. "I am not a fool," he said. She entered and shut the door and leaned against it as if it might otherwise open of its own accord and someone unsuitable would fall in. The candle by his bed made a small, careful fire of her hair, throwing light into it in shards. Her face was pale in that light with the paleness that means intensity, not fear. She crossed to him and put her hands on either side of his face. He held still. He did not close his eyes. "You will not go west," she said. It was not a question. "No," he said. "He will be furious." "He has been furious at me since I was 8, Jaime said. "And before. It is his perfume." She smiled thinly. "You think yourself a jester. You are a fool, but you are not amusing." She let one hand drop, fingers trailing along his jaw. "I do not care whether you amuse him. I care that you live. I care that you wear that ridiculous white and look like the only honest thing in the city. I care that you are where I can find you when I wake and the world has tilted and I need to set it aright again." He could not help it. He put his hand against hers where it set like a brand on his face. "I am tired," he said. It surprised him how much of the truth could be held in those two words. "So am I," she said. "So am I." When she turned to go, he did not stop her. He watched the door close. He watched the flame on the candle do its small war with the air. He lay down, cloak folded carefully in the chair by the bed, as always, and sleep came like a slow thief who had decided to sit and talk a while before he found what he had come for. In the morning, the city had shifted half a degree and no one who was not watching would have noticed. The gold cloaks drilled at a different hour. The guard at the gate to Maegor's Holdfast had a different man in a different temper. The kitchen had run out of the right cheese. Pycelle shuffled at a pace that told of gout. In the tower, Barristan wrote a letter he did not show to anyone and sealed it with a seal that had seen 3 kings die. Jaime stood the morning watch outside the king's chambers with his sword on his hip and his hand on the pommel and thought about all the ways a man could get into a room and all the ways a man could leave one forever. He felt the letter from his father like a weight in his cloak. He decided to carry it until the seal wore a hole in the fabric. He decided that each day he did so would be a day he had chosen something himself. These were the coins he could spend. They were small. He would count them carefully. Word came from the riverlands slowly, as if walking with a limp. The mountain burned. River yards turned to ash and fish floated belly up in eddies. Spoiled. Men told stories about flayed horses, about a beast in a man's helm. Jaime listened and kept his face calm, kept his mouth polite, kept his hand steady when he lifted a cup. None of it was their war. All of it was, his refusal had not stopped anything. It had only moved the place where he stood to watch it. Another summons came from the west, and another, and each cut less than the last, as if the blade had dulled with use. The last of them was not a summons but a statement. The banners are raised. The matter is proceeding. House Lannister does not bend. Jaime folded this one with care, set it atop the others, and found that if he breathed only through his nose for a count of 10, the tightness in his chest passed. You learned such tricks, living, on a day of heat in which the air in the yard felt as if the cooks were breathing on it. Jaime came upon Arya Stark in a corridor, a stray arrow of a girl with her hair cropped near boy and her eyes full of a kind of suspicion that made him smile against his better judgment. She was slipping along the wall as if she loved it for its cold. She froze when she saw him. "You look like a cat that has been kicked," he said mildly. "It is rarely a crime to be a cat in this castle unless you catch the row." "Ing mouse." She frowned at him as if trying to decide whether he meant her ill or simply meant nothing in particular. "You shouldn't say that," she said. If it's not a crime, they'll make it one. He laughed in spite of himself. Who taught you that? No one, she said defensively, which is to say someone had. Do you know where you are going? He asked. Away from here, she said. She looked down, then up. Do you? Jaime leaned against the wall and crossed his ankles. I suppose not. He let her go. He did not tell a guard. He did not tell anyone. It seemed to him then that this was the shape of his day, to hold a door ajar and not insist on knowing whether those who took advantage of it did so for harm or for good. He would be judged, as men always are, by effects he never meant. That night he dreamed of the throne room, as always, but when he turned and drove steel into a body that bled and called him traitor, the body that fell was not the old king in his filth, but a man with a golden beard and a mouth that had only one word in it. Must. He woke at once, and he was already standing, breath a brand pulled from coals and set down in air that did not know what to do with it. He dressed. He went to the window. The city was there, as it had been and would be long after his bones were chalk under stone. He touched the sill. It was warm. The stone remembered everything and told nothing. He sighed, slow, through his nose. He thought briefly of riding out, of making a single clean cut through his vow and letting the world bleed as it chose. Then he turned from the window and lay down and slept again. Because sometimes the most defiant thing a man can do is not to move. In the morning, a courier with a face like cured leather and a chest that had once been large under a breastplate stood in the White Sword Tower's hall and asked for him by name. Jaime went down to him. The man held a small chest with iron straps and a simple lock. He set it on the table that had held Jaime's bread and olives and honey a lifetime ago. He made a small, formal bow. He said, "From the west," and nothing else. He did not offer a wax. He did not offer a seal. He did not offer any explanation a man could argue with. Jaime took the key the man produced and held it. He looked at Barristan. Barristan's mouth did not move. Jaime turned the key. The lock opened with a noise like two bones meeting. Inside was a chain of gold heavy as a child. Its links were made in the shape of lions biting each other's tails so that no end could be found. There was a square of parchment folded beneath it. He unfolded it and found 3 words in his father's hand. "Choose your name." He held the chain. It was warm from the chest. He set it back on the folded parchment and closed the lid. He pushed the chest across the table to the courier. He said, "Return this," and the man took it without blinking and left. "He will not forget," Barristan said. "No," Jaime said, "but he will learn." "Men who are mountains do not often learn," Barristan said, not unkindly. "Then the river will," Jaime said, and straightened his cloak where it had skewed. "We are in the river, sire. We move whether we believe it or not." By the time the boar met the spear that killed it, 3 hunts later, the city had more letters in it than pigeons. Some of them came with wax from the Vale, some with wax from the riverlands. One came with a seal Jaime had not thought to see again, a crowned stag over a heart. He broke it and read Stannis Baratheon's words in a hand that looked like a man who believed that if he pressed hard enough the rightness of his thought would cut into the paper and engrave itself there forever. The letter said what Stannis always said in one form or another: law, right, proof, duty. Jaime folded it and let it lie on the table. He thought about law and he thought about right and he thought about the proof of things and found that all 3 shrank when held against his understanding of his oath, which was smaller and yet somehow larger, as if it had learned to breathe in a box. On the morning of the 4th hunt, Cersei did not come to the yard to watch them ride out. Joffrey did. He had chosen a green doublet that made him look younger. It had been someone's notion of strategy, likely his mother's, and it had the wrong effect entirely. It made the boy's cruelty look like a child's tantrum rather than what it was. Sandor watched with his one good eye and his whole good scorn. Robert mounted and then dismounted, laughing at his own clumsiness. The world felt as it had the last time and the time before. That is to say, it felt like itself. Jaime's horse took the bit gently. He stroked its neck. He had a thought then, the kind that shows you a door in a wall where you had only ever seen stone. He realized that what he was about to do, ride a pace behind a man who made his own danger like a boy throwing stones at a hive, was the same as what he had done in the throne room years ago, and that the difference between a murder and a service could be as small as the turn of a wrist. He wondered briefly if the gods, if they existed at all, had any interest in such distinctions. He hoped they did not. Men had made him weary enough. Divine judgment would finish the job. They rode. The day smelled of dust baked thin. The light had the color of old straw. The boar, when they found it, was smaller than stories, which did not make it small. Robert's spear took it poorly, and it turned and came, and for an instant the world narrowed into a needle and a point. Here was the thing that might change the shape of the city, and here was the arm he had trained for 20 years, and here was the choice he had made already, and here was the chance to make it again. Jaime's horse moved under him as if it knew before he did. He put the point of his spear where the beast's eye would be before the beast was quite where his eye could be. He had that much worse eye. And him, he had the memory of a madman dying and calling him traitor, and that memory made his hand calm now. The spear took the boar in the socket. It squealed finally, honestly, as a pig, a sound small for such a body. And then the sound stopped, as sounds do when the body that made them is done. Robert shouted and threw his spear in triumphant frustration and laughed as if he had drunk more than he had. Men shouted too, because shouting is easier than realizing other men are necessary for your life. They butchered where it fell and carried back what they would eat. Robert walked like a man who has remembered his own weight and found it comic. He threw an arm around Jaime's shoulders and said something bawdy about boars and women and how both were made happier by a good spear. Jaime smiled and allowed the arm and shook his head and looked down and saw the drop of blood on his boot that was not the boar's. He could not say how he knew it, he only knew. He looked up and met Sandor's eye and found there a knowledge he had not asked for. The hound nodded once. Then he turned away and said nothing, because his silence was one of the few mercies the gods had left this court. Back in the Red Keep, the stories changed. They change anyway. This time they changed without someone bending them. The king had brought down a great boar, the tale-tellers said. He had, and a man in white had helped. The queen smiled a smile that remembered the future and walked from the hall without looking back. Joffrey listened with rapt attention to the part where the spear entered the socket and asked if there had been much blood, and when told there had been some but not too much, looked disappointed. Barristan entered the tower and wrote, very carefully, that on this day under such and such a wind and in this season Ser Jaime of House Lannister did the duty to which he was sworn. At dusk that night, Jaime stood on the outer balustrade and watched the city spread itself below him like a tired woman. The torches pricked on one by one, willing stars into a sky that had not asked for them. Somewhere a fight started in a tavern and burned itself out, the way fires do when the wood is wet. Somewhere a child was born and did not cry for a long, worrisome moment and then did. Somewhere a raven chose a chimney for a pillow and will regret it in the morning when the smoke rises. He stood with his hands flat and his mouth closed and let the weight of nothing happening sit on his shoulders like a cat waiting to decide whether to stay. Varys came, and this time he did not speak. He stood beside Jaime for a long count of heartbeats, and the silence between them was a third presence. At last he said, "It is a peculiar thing, to change the course of a sentence by no more than moving one comma." "I have never been a man for grammar," Jaime said. "No," Varys said. "But you have a knack for punctuation." Jaime looked at him, then away. He did not smile. He did not frown. He watched a fisherman's lantern sway and go suddenly still. He dreamed that night of a book with blank pages, and when he woke he had the odd, steady certainty that he had written something important in it while he slept. He could not read it. He felt light and heavy at once. He dressed. He took up the white cloak. He settled it. He walked to the door and opened it and found, in the corridor, a small boy with hair like the inside of a chestnut and eyes the color of river stone. Holding in his two hands a roll of parchment he seemed afraid to let touch the ground. "For you," the boy said. His voice had the squeak of childhood and the echo of a man's. "From the hand." Jaime took it. It bore no seal. He unrolled it and read Stannis's name again, and beneath it words that had the calm of law. Claims, names, birth, bed. He rolled it again. He gave the boy a coin. He closed the door with care. He stood with the letter in his hand a long time. The candle burned down and wrote its own wax letter on the table. He read the words again. He turned to the wall and leaned his head there and let the stone bruise his brow. He laughed, a small, contained laugh, not because it was funny but because he could not do otherwise. The morning was suddenly full of rooms too narrow to turn in. When he went to Cersei, he went quickly. He went as if he could outrun the letter before it arrived in her head, which he knew was foolish, as he knew that his legs were less strong than the news they meant to carry. He did not knock. He opened the door and found her with a cup in her hand and 2 lines at the corner of her mouth that the candle's light deepened and the days would not. She looked up and saw his expression and nodded, almost imperceptibly, because she was very quick. "You know," he said. "I have always known," she said. "I have known," he said, and then, "I have not known. The second is the truth," she said, very gently for her. He crossed the room and set the letter down. He did not sit. The cup in her hand was steady. He resisted with effort, the urge to take it away and put water there instead. "What will you do?" she asked. She did not say we, and he heard the mercy in that. "I will do what I have done," he said, his mouth shaping the words with some surprise at itself. "I will stand where I am meant to stand. I will be the thing I have said I am." "That will not be enough," she said. "It has to be," he said. They did not touch. They did not look away. The city outside their window made the sound cities make. Buying, selling, swearing, praying, fucking, dying. He realized that he had not prayed in years. He did not know a God who would take him. He did not know a God he wanted. In the White Sword Tower, Barristan wrote another letter and sealed it without looking at Jaime. In the hall below, a courier with a face one could not remember stood waiting for an answer to a question he had not asked aloud. Varys walked past with a smile on his face and a grief at his spine. Janos Slint counted men by the price they would ask to change their minds. Littlefinger watched a droplet of ink fall and spread, fascinated by the geometry of it. Jaime stood his watch. He placed his hand on his sword and felt its warmth from his body. He thought of a day when he had made the same gesture in a different room and had been called traitor for it. He thought of the boy king whose face he wore in moments he forgot to be a man. He thought of a stag in the Kingswood and a spear in a socket and a chain in a small chest. He thought of the White Book and how, if a man wrote his life with his actions, sometimes the ink was slow to show. When the blow came, whether it was a blow of law or a blow of blade, he meant to withstand it. Not because he thought himself stronger than other men. He had long since learned his limits, but because he had chosen a posture and standing still in it seemed, at last, the only honest thing he could do. He was a Kingsguard, and the wind might cut, and words might be only words, but the white cloak lay on his shoulders and made him into the shape he had wanted to be when he was young and foolish. The bells of the September rang for none. He did not move when they began. He did not move when they ended. He watched the corridor. He watched the door. He waited for the next thing.